Punk'd, The Night Stalker, and the Battle of Atlantic are all on this day. Welcome back to On This Day. Today's date is March 17th, 2022. It is the 76th day of the year. We got 289 days left. It is the 11th Thursday in the 12th week in the 87th day of winter. You got 3 days left until spring. So what's that, like Monday? No, wait, hold on. Sunday or Monday, I guess. If today's your birthday, your birthstones are an aquamarine, bloodstone, or jade. You get a choice. Today is St. Patrick's Day. It's also National Corned Beef and Cabbage Day, which I cannot stand. I'm half Irish, and yeah, that's not my thing. My whole family right around this time of the year used to eat it, not me. On March 17th, National Corned Beef and Cabbage Day coincides with St. Patrick's Day. Imagine that. At least in the United States. So there's no corn in corned beef. To corn something is simply to preserve it in salty brine. The term corn refers to a coarse grains of salt used in curing. Corned beef is a salt-cured beef product. Traditional Irish corned beef and cabbage recipes use salt pork or a bacon joint instead of corned beef. However, sometime in the mid-1800s when Irish immigrants came to America, they found Jewish corned beef very similar in texture to the bacon joint or pork. As a result, they used the corned beef as a replacement for the bacon when preparing corned beef and cabbage meals. Soon after, Irish Americans began having corned beef and cabbage on St. Patrick's Day in a way to celebrate being Irish. Other ways to celebrate being Irish is have a bunch of kids, drink a lot of beer or whiskey, and dance from the waist down only. Like river dance. They don't use the upper part of their body. It's weird. All right, let's see what else March 17th has given us. 1776, the American Revolution. The British Army evacuates Boston, ending the siege of Boston after George Washington and Henry Knox place artillery overlooking the city. Yeah, they just, it was not going to end well for the British, so they decided, well, that's enough. You could have Boston. 1943, the Battle of the Atlantic reaches a climax. So the Battle of the Atlantic was a major part of World War II. Let's flash forward to 1940. Britain stood alone against Nazi Germany. Pretty much all of Europe had fallen to the Nazis, and it was the UK holding ground. The US had not entered the war yet, and they were in desperate need of supplies. So Canada and the US eventually started moving supplies across the Atlantic Ocean. Well, you only had a certain amount of distance that you could have air cover. And then there was this thousands and thousands of miles of ocean where there was no air cover. And that's where the Nazis would place their submarines, and they would hunt them down. There's a great movie right now called Greyhound on Apple Plus with Tom Hanks, and it's about that whole the Atlantic crossing and all that, and how the submarines used to hunt down these supply ships. In the beginning, the supply ships would leave in a big convoy from like Halifax in Canada. For a couple 100 miles, they would have air cover, which was great against submarines. And after that, they would have a couple, they called them corvettes, destroyers, whatever. Basically ships that were designed to hunt and kill submarines. Well, they weren't as effective as air cover, so it created a problem. And that's where the German U-boats would stay, right in this area between UK's air cover and Canada's air cover. And they would hunt them down like a wolf pack. Matter of fact, that's what they refer to themselves as, a wolf pack. And they were merciless. Now, for a couple years, this is how we had to do it, and they expected to lose a certain amount of ships every single crossing. Sad thing about losing those ships, they couldn't stop to rescue the men that were in the water. So torpedo hits a cargo ship or a destroyer, and the men scramble off the ship, life vests, they jump in the water, whatever, lifeboat. Well, if any ships stopped to help them, they were an easier target, so they kind of had to keep moving. A lot of times, the ocean was too rough anyway to really try and do any kind of rescue attempt, so a lot of men just perished there in the ocean as they watched their comrades and their friends, their countrymen, just sail on without them. These convoys, for a time, also had to go to Russia, so they would go up in the Arctic Ocean and get hit there too. At the time, in case you don't know, Russia was our ally against Nazi Germany in World War II. And they needed supplies, mostly in the form of weaponry. Not as much food and stuff like that as the UK needed. The Battle of the Atlantic lasted 68 months. That's the longest battle in all of World War II. It actually started on September 3rd, 1939. Just hours after Britain declared war on Germany, a German submarine torpedoed a passenger ship off the coast of Ireland that was on its way to Canada. So we're talking almost 4 years later, this battle peaked. I mean, it was bad in the autumn of 1942. Over 2,000 merchant ships had already been sunk. Of course, it lost thousands of men that manned those ships. And it was a losing battle at this point. At the rate that they were sinking German submarines, Germany was pumping out 8 new submarines. And on the Allied side, the cargo ships were going down twice as fast as we could build them, along with the millions of tons of much-needed supplies. But in 1943, the British had finally developed an aircraft that could support them almost the entire way. On top of that, they've come up with tactics and technology for the time to defend the convoys. Fewer and fewer ships went down, and more submarines were sunk. 1948, Belgium, France, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom signed the Treaty of Brussels, a precursor to the North Atlantic Treaty, establishing NATO. 1950, researchers at the University of California, Berkeley announced the creation of element 98, which they named californium. 1958, the United States launches the first solar-powered satellite, which is also the first satellite to achieve a long-term orbit. 1960, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signs the National Security Council directive on the anti-Cuban covert action program that will ultimately lead to the Bay of Pigs invasion. That was a fiasco. If ever there was a United States fiasco, that's in the top 10. 1966, off the coast of Spain in the Mediterranean, the DSV Alvin submarine finds the missing American hydrogen bomb. That's something you really don't want to have go missing, you know? You want to keep track of all your hydrogen bombs. At least that's what they told me in school. 1968, as a result of nerve gas testing by the U.S. Army Chemical Corps in Skull Valley, Utah, over 6,000 local sheep, I should say, in the valley area, are found dead. I guess something got out. 1985, serial killer Richard Ramirez, aka the Night Stalker, commits his first 2 murders in his Los Angeles murder spree. This was scary, but I love the ending. The locals actually saw him, caught him, and gave him a good beating before he had to be rescued by the police. 2020, West Virginia, the Department of Health and Human Resources confirmed the first case of the coronavirus in 2019 in the state of West Virginia. TV shows released on March 17th, 2003. Punk'd. Okay, so this starred Ashton Kutcher where they just played pranks on celebrities. Who knows if the celebrities were in on it? A lot of them seem real, a lot of them seem fake. My favorite one, probably the best thing I've ever seen on television, was Shannon Elizabeth. She was in that show American Pie. She's done other things, but she was in American Pie. Well, her agent, her husband, lawyers, and a couple other people were all in on this, and they had gone on a vacation to Mexico. And then they call her in for a meeting, and they sit her down, and now keep in mind, they're all in on it except for her. They start talking about someone had a hidden camera in their hotel room, and they said they're going to release it to the internet, and she's freaking out. Now, she doesn't know this is a prank. The whole time she's all upset and she's starting to cry, and her husband keeps going, "How'd I look in the video? Was I okay? I mean, did I look okay? How did I look?" And they keep comforting him. "No, you look great, pal. You look great. You did tremendous work. You were doing fabulous." Finally, she freaks out. She goes, "Who cares how he looked?" And it was just great. Then they finally told her it was a prank. It was a great show. But anyway, it was a hidden camera series created by Ashton Kutcher, who also served as the series producer and host. It ran from 2003 to 2007, but returned briefly in 2012 with like a new host, and it sucked. And it also returned again in 2015 on BET with, again, new hosts. Born on March 17th, Mia Hamm. She led the U.S. women's soccer team to a gold medal at the 1996 Olympics as a forward and held the U.S. record for international goals at 158 until she was topped by Abby Wambach in 2013. Mia Hamm was an excellent soccer player. She was phenomenal. Great athlete. As a kid, she had club foot and had to wear corrective shoes while she was moving around the country with her military family, which as a kid, I'm sure that's just devastating, having to wear shoes that aren't in fashion. She is 50 years old. She was born in 1972. Her career, she retired, I should say, not her career ended, but she retired in 2004. Died on March 17th, 1983, we lost Arthur Godfrey. He started off his career in the Navy as a radio operator, and then he moved right into radio when he got out of the Navy, and for the longest time was pretty much the morning radio host for the United States, I guess you could say. He eventually jumped over to television and had a long career there. When he was diagnosed with lung cancer, he stopped all advertising for smoking on his show and eventually became an anti-smoking spokesperson. Emphysema, thought to have been caused by decades of smoking and radiation treatments for Godfrey's lung cancer, became a problem in the early 1980s. Godfrey died of the condition at Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan on March 17, 1983. I did read reports that he actually died on the 16th. Wikipedia says 16th. I looked at other things that said 17th. It was around midnight, I guess. I don't know. So it doesn't matter which day he actually died on. He was a beloved radio and television host here in the United States, and he deserves to be mentioned. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a productive day. Be nice to each other.